Welcome to the Thrive Today podcast. I'm Natalie Bourne. I'm the media host for Thrive Today and the founder of Innovation Meets Leadership. Look, we are a podcast for women who lead and believe. And today we are catching up again with Dr. Dave Martin. He is America's #1 Christian success coach. And in addition to that, he's a coach, he's a pastor, he's a mentor, an inspirational speaker, a business leader, and he really helps to communicate biblical principles for success. We're also going to talk about his book today, Mindset Matters. So I cannot wait to dig in. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Dave.
Thank you. Thank you. So great to be back with you. Love what you're doing. Always love to be a part of the podcast, the magazine. So great. Thank you.
Well, I want to dig right in because mindset is such an important word, but it's such a challenge for us to deal with in our life. So I'd love to look into and just kind of introspectively ask the question, how does our mindset shape our overall outlook on our life, the world around us, and maybe even what we're going to do for a living?
Yeah, your mindset. I'll always say when you were born, God gave you two ends, right? One to sit on and one to think with. Depending on which one you use, depends on how far you get. But our mindset has everything to do with it, with our outlook, our perspective, as you'd say. It's a particular attitude or a way of regarding something, right? And it's always our mindset is a lot of times influenced by our past, influenced by the way we grew up. I grew up in a small town in Mississippi. We had a small mindset. We had a very, almost like a poverty mindset, the way I grew up. And I always say I left Mississippi long before Mississippi left me. Like I moved to Florida, but the mindset and the perspective of things because of my own experiences, the way I grew up, the way I saw things, beliefs. So often that's one of the things I was telling a group of business people the other day. I said, we've really got to deal with your BS, right? Your belief systems is what I was talking about. But yeah, our beliefs shape our mindset. Our beliefs shape our perspectives, our values. All that comes through our mindset. And so I always say, we need the doctor is here today to give you a checkup from the neck up,
I
right?
love that.
To help get rid of some stinking thinking.
Hmm.
Because if we can change our thinking, I had the opportunity to be mentored by a man named Wayne Dyer, who's passed away now. But I remember spending time with him in his home in Maui. And one of the things he taught so often was if you change the way you look at things, the things that you're looking at will begin to change, right?
Wow.
Change your perspective. If you can change your mindset, all of a sudden you have a choice when you wake up in the morning, right? Good morning, Lord, or good Lord, morning, right? And our outlook so often determines our outcome. So I think it's so important, our mindset. I know that was a long answer to your question, but our mindset is so vital and so important to our success, how we see things, our perspective.
No, that was great. And I think that that really sets up very well what we're going to talk about today. I mean, I think one of the things I want to lean into a little bit further with what you're saying there is self perception and how self perception, I can say that word, actually impacts kind of the lens through which we not only view ourselves, view others, interpret events. I mean, this idea of self perception can be such a launching point or a killer, right, for us in our journey and in what we kind of put our hands to in life.
Yeah, I always think back when I think of that, our self perception, I think of being a person of faith. Of course, I relate a lot to what the Bible says. And I look at the story in Numbers chapter 13, one of my favorite stories. Moses, they're about to go into the promised land. The good things that are ahead of them, they're in Egypt, but the promised land's right there. Just Moses says, hey, let's go check it out. Let's send some spies to go look at it, right? And he picks 12 of them because there's 12 tribes. So he gets one from every tribe and they go over and they check everything out. They come back and they said, well, what does it look like? They said, well, 10 of them said it doesn't look good. Two of them said, oh, we can do this. And said, well, no, there's giants. And the 10 of them said, there's giants. Two of them said, oh yeah, but God's on our side. Who cares about the giants? Yeah, they saw the giants. All of them saw the giants, but two of them saw what was on the other side, which was a land of milk and honey and grapes and all this stuff. And all 12 of them had faith. Just 10 of them had faith in the giants, 2 of them had faith in God,
Mm.
right? But the 10 that came back saying, "There's no way we can defeat them. We look like grasshoppers compared to them." And they even think we look like grasshoppers. Self-perception right there. No, they think we look like it. There are 3 ways to see yourself, right? You can see yourself the way other people see you, which may be good, it may not be good. I learned a long time ago, what other people think about you is none of your business.
Mm.
I think Eleanor Roosevelt said it this way, she said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent."
Yes.
So I'm not gonna live my life how other people see me. Now, it is important how I see myself. I wanna have a good confidence, a good self-esteem, but, things happen. People say things to us, people have done things to us that if we held on to them could affect our self-esteem. I mean, I could think of one time, one time in high school, a girl broke up with me. She said, "I'm breaking up with you. You got low self-esteem." I said, "Oh, well, thanks. That helped a lot," right? Another time in high school, this girl called me. She said, "Come over to my house. Nobody's home." I went over to her house and nobody was home. I just, I kept knocking. I was all by myself. That's horrible. That's damaging to my self-esteem. But the third way to see yourself is to see yourself the way God sees you. A friend of mine wrote a book. She wrote a book called Godfidence.
Mm.
It's one thing to have confidence, which is good self-perception, but as a person of faith, I've got something beyond that. I have a confidence, not just seeing who I am, but seeing whose I am. But
Yeah.
these spies came back and said, we can't see that. The giants are too big, and you'll never leave where you're at until you can see where you're going, right? You'll never leave Egypt till you can see yourself in Canaan. See, first of all, you got to get a picture of something better, a vision. If all you do is see yourself sick, you'll never see yourself healed. If all you do is see yourself broke or your business barely taken off, or you can't figure out how to get to the next place or franchise, whatever it is you're trying to do, you'll never get there until you can begin to see yourself there. And I love that. I thought about the story the other day because a lot of times we get that kind of mentality, that grasshopper mentality, that grasshopper complex. And I thought I never thought about it, but grasshoppers have wings, but they can't really fly, right? They jump a little bit, they move a little bit, but you think God says that we have the wings of eagles.
Wow.
Eagles soar. Are you going to have a grasshopper mentality, or do you want to have an eagle mentality? And I think if we can get that kind of self understanding, because our that kind of perception, it'll make all the difference in the world. Getting a vision of where you're going, of where your business is going, of where your finances are going, of where your relationships are going. I think it's so important that we develop a clear vision of that, and that's by seeing ourselves different, seeing our situations different, and then living into that. I had the opportunity to coach a guy by the name of Lou Ferrigno, who he was the original Incredible Hulk. And when he was 9 years old, he remembers he was born deaf. And he remembers his dad telling him, "You'll never make anything of yourself. You can't even hear. You don't talk right." But he said somewhere in his mid-teens, mid to late teens, somehow he said, "I don't even tell you. I couldn't tell you how or who helped me, but I got a picture of myself the way God saw me,
Wow.
not the way other people saw me, not even the way I saw me, but how God saw me." He said, and what most of us do is we have this dream, but we lower our dream to our present circumstance instead of living into the dream. And he said, "I began to live into the picture that God had of me."
Wow.
And then he went on to be Mr. Olympia and to be a successful actor as the original Incredible Hulk. And now he's a motivational speaker and sharing his story with others. But it all started by changing the way he saw himself. And I think that self perception is so vital because it pertains to our self reflection. And there's just so much we can talk about with that. But getting the vision, a clear vision of where you want to go, I think is so vital. And that comes through that self perception.
That's so good. I even think about just listening to I just recently listened to the last time you were on Thrive Today because I wanted to just make sure I was super fresh on what we talked about. And I'm like, man, that was so good. And everyone needs to go back and listen to that episode because a lot of what you talked about as well was a vision board for your life and how you started to see those things come to pass that you wanted, that you dreamed of, but it didn't happen necessarily in the timing that you wanted it to happen. It didn't happen when you thought it would happen, but
Right.
you kept that vision in front of you, and eventually you begin to accomplish some of the goals and dreams that you had. Let's talk about that in terms of self-reflection and how that plays a bigger piece into this whole picture.
Yeah, I mean, self-reflection is a valuable tool for really gaining insight into your self-perception, right? And into your own thought patterns and mindset. So, when I think of my self-thoughts or self-reflection, self-patterns, number one, it gives me increased self-awareness.
Mm.
'Cause there's so many people that have none of that. When you think about emotional intelligence, do you even understand? Do you have any self-awareness? But self-reflection allows us to examine our thoughts. I love reflection. I do that every week. At the end of the week, I take an hour or two just to reflect and on the week. I learned this from one of my mentors who actually, I've never met him personally. He's passed away, but a man by the name of Jim Rohn. And that's what I love about books and
Mhm.
podcasts. And you never even have to meet the person for them to mentor you
That's right.
and for them to help you. It's the shortcut. Mentorship is the shortcut to success. I'm so grateful for mentors in my life. If I can learn from someone else's mistakes, what took someone their entire lifetime to learn, they put in a book and I can learn it in 3 hours for $20.
That's right.
You'd be crazy not to buy books. I've got 4,000 books. Why? There's too much stuff I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I write books. That's why we got the magazine to give you understanding that can save you years and years through that mentorship. But that self reflection allows us to examine our thoughts, our actions, even our emotions objectively, and increased awareness helps us to better understand even our motivation. What motivates us? I've got to reflect on that at the end of each month. I'll take a day and just reflect on that month. What did I learn this month? What do I need to do different? And at the end of a year, I'll take a weekend just to reflect. So I think it's so vital. Our values, our perceptions, which are all that's part of our self perception, and then it helps us identify patterns in our life. I think last time we talked a little bit about habits
Yes.
or patterns, but self-reflection helps us to recognize those reoccurring thought patterns. I know I have them. I still deal with things. I'm like, I haven't beat that yet. That battlefield that we fight in our mind and,
Yeah.
and our thoughts, but by paying attention to the patterns, the thought patterns and things like that, then we can uncover those self-limiting beliefs or those negative beliefs. And I have to work. People think, well, you're just one of the most positive people I've ever met. I'm like, you know how hard I work to be positive. I was born negative. My blood type is even B negative. I'm working on this all the time, but so I'm always having to go back. What's my limiting beliefs? Because so
Mhm.
many of us would admit what limits us in life is our own thinking.
Yeah.
Our own thinking limits us. I can think of many times that the key to thinking big is exposure.
Mm.
I used to do a conference, and we're getting ready to actually start it back for business leaders and Christian business leaders, and we would do it at the Waldorf Astoria
Mhm.
in Orlando. People said, "Well, why don't you do it at the Marriott?" Nothing wrong with Marriott, it's great. Why don't you can do it at the Courtyard. They got you get a lot cheaper over there, right? But part of the whole thing was the mindset, the environment that you were in, the way you saw yourself. I don't know, I just act different at the Ritz-Carlton than I do at the Holiday Inn.
That's right.
It's a different way of thinking. It
Mhm.
expands your mindset. By paying attention to those patterns, you see those self-limiting beliefs that may be holding you back, patterns of self-doubt, the fear of failure. It's so often that hinders so many people is that
Mhm.
fear of failure. And then also that puts you into a place of personal growth and really so that you can make the changes that you need to make. So I'm constantly looking at that self-reflection because once I've identified the patterns, thought patterns, the mindsets, the self-perception and those kind of things, that self-reflection empowers us to now challenge those beliefs, right? And to change those beliefs.
Mm.
Like maybe you heard of, money's the root of all evil, right? How often we heard that? Well, that's not what it says.
Right.
right? It says the love of money. But I grew up my whole life, money is evil. Money is evil. You have a lot of money, rich people are bad. If someone's driving a nice car, oh, they must be doing something illegal. You know, I remember driving. I grew up, like I said, small town, poor kid from Mississippi. Driving to church, we had to drive past this one neighborhood of really nice houses. I mean, big ones, with the swimming pools and stuff.
Yeah.
People would be out by the pool drinking lemonade, just enjoying themselves. Me and my brother in the backseat of the car, sweating because we didn't have air conditioning in our we had air conditioning, but it was broke. But my dad made us leave the windows rolled up because he didn't want anyone to know we didn't have air
Oh,
conditioning. We were poor, but we were proud. And we were sweating back there. My dad would look at me and my brother and said, "Boys, you see those people? The ones at the pool drinking lemonade, enjoying themselves?" He said, "Those folks are miserable."
wow.
And I'm thinking, I wish I was miserable. That looked good. We were going to church. We were not miserable. We loved Jesus. We don't know about them. But it was all limiting beliefs. And I had to
Mhm.
understand it's not the love of money.
Mm.
It's not money that's the root of all evil. It's the love of money. It's when money comes before God. Money, that's why I had to change my pattern. A great friend of mine and mentor is a guy by the name of Jack Canfield. And Jack really helped me in changing and understanding a system for changing those habits or those limiting beliefs in just reprogramming myself to money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is. Money is the root of good vacations. Money is the root of being able to build orphanages in
Mhm.
Peru.
Yeah.
Money is there's so much that money does. So I have to change. It's not evil. It's a tool. And so I had to change my pattern. So that empowered me in that self-reflection, which led to personal growth, which is vital for all of us, is to take responsibility for our personal growth. It increased self-confidence, improved interactions with other people. So by consistently practicing self-reflection, by continually going back and reflecting, what did I learn? We gain all kind of this deeper understanding of our own self-perception, of how we see ourselves, and then of course as believers, how God sees us, that Godfidence, then those thought patterns, ultimately it leads to a much more fulfilling life, a much more purposeful life. I call it the ultimate life. Ultimate is the best. Life is the way of living. And I heard a really smart, handsome man say one time, "And make the rest of your life the
The
best of
best of
your
your
life."
life.
And,
I think
and
you might have said that.
I like that guy. I've listened to all of his podcasts and read all of his books, but,
Well, I wanna lean into this a little bit further because I was even at an event just a few weeks ago and someone walked up to me and said, "How do you get past the imposter syndrome?" And, it's just I was like, "Okay, in 30 seconds, I, need to answer this question for you." But it's such a big thing that most people deal with, and it's such a big thing to unpack, which is, you get to the end of yourself, you do this self-reflection and you realize, "Okay, I feel like an imposter, right? I don't feel like I belong because of my background. I don't feel I belong at the table. Because of this, I don't feel like I can do that." What does it look like for you and how did you chip away at this over time to where you could show up knowing that you are fully loved, fully known by God and able to just walk in the purpose that God's called you to?
right, don't they tell us, "Fake it till you make it," right? And I think one of the things was really just understanding that I'm a gift from God. That everything I have is a gift, right? I'm a gift to somebody. But God created me, when I'm buying someone a gift, say it's your birthday, and I find out just the perfect gift for you. I didn't go to Costco and buy it in bulk for everybody. I found just the perfect gift for you. God, you're a gift, and God didn't go to Costco and just make everyone the same. Your life in bulk. A friend of mine wrote a book. You were born an original. Don't die a copy.
Mhm.
Right. Understanding who I was, understanding and it took a while because I grew up, I was insecure. Things happen, my own self-perceptions. I mean, I used to be so insecure. One time I painted a blue square in my backyard just so Google Earth would think I had a pool. That's really low self-esteem right there. But I had to work on that. I think that's a big part of showing up to the table. Now, I still understand that I sit at tables all the time. I'm like, how in the world did I get here? But that's where I think a real good understanding of God's favor comes into the whole picture,
Yeah.
because I realize I shouldn't be. I probably shouldn't even be on this podcast. You could get a lot better people than me. But God's favor puts me places I never dreamed I'd be, saying things I never thought I'd say, or writing books I never thought I'd write. And so I go back over and over again because I'm continually in awe. And I think that's a big key to God really promoting you and putting you in those places, is when you completely understand that every gift I had. That's why I was speaking in Sorrento, Italy at a Wealth Warrior conference recently. And it was some of the top millionaires and billionaires from around the world. A guy brings them together, this beautiful place in Sorrento, Italy, and somehow I got invited to speak. Now, what's hilarious is I'm going to the Wealth Warrior Conference. I have a pretty nice suitcase, but somewhere between New York and London, my Toomey suitcase got ripped to shreds. And I did an overnight in London because I spoke somewhere there, and then my suitcase shows up, and I don't have time to find a new suitcase. The Toomey store in the airport, they don't carry the big garment ones. They only carry the smaller ones. And so a friend of mine in London zip ties my suitcase and gorilla glue and tape. We put this whole thing back together. So I pull up to Italy, walking into the Wealth Warrior Conference through the lobby of the hotel, pulling my duct tape briefcase or suitcase. I'm like, here I am at the Wealth Warrior Conference. Yeah, awesome. And just knowing, okay, God, it's just kind of funny. I could have got in. What am I doing here? I look like how did this kid from Mississippi get here? But again, knowing only God could do that.
Yeah.
So it's not me. Every gift I had, and I told these people, I said, we talk about me. I'm a self-made millionaire, right? He goes, not one of us are self-made millionaire. I'm not a self-made anything. I'm a God made everything.
Mhm.
God gave you, even if you don't, and there wasn't a Christian conference. You don't even have to know God, but I can tell you, He created you.
Yeah.
He gave you the gifts. He gave you the talents. He gave you the abilities. Everything that you have came from Him. The fact that you're breathing right
Mm.
now. So let's. I'm doing a whole thing right now on God made millionaires. Right? We're not self. None of us are self made.
Mhm.
We're all God made, and I think that is a big part of being able to sit at the table, walk into the room, and go, you know what? I might not deserve to be here, but God put me here.
Mhm.
So that gives me back again to the Godfidence to sit in the room, to stand in the room, to talk in the room, whatever it may be. And so I think all that goes back to that perception of who I am because I know whose I am.
Wow. Well, that's so powerful because I really believe that what you're grabbing hold to right now is that if God allowed you to get into the room, you need to show up fully His, ready to offer whatever He's put inside of you to offer. And I love that. And it takes all of the pressure off of you and it
Yeah.
puts the pressure back on God. All right, God, I'm here. I'm doing what you've called me to do. I've prepared as much as I can. Now it's your turn to show up and do what you do. So I love that. I want you to take a moment. We were just talking before we started the podcast about all the different books you've written. And I really would love for the ladies of this podcast to lean into all that you have available in your arsenal in terms of books. So if you would just talk through the books and then let's talk about a little bit about your current book, your most recent one, Mindset Matters.
Okay. Yeah. And by the way, and the last thing you were saying, I just taught this last Sunday on God inspired ideas,
Wow.
right? That God gives us these ideas. And how often do we have an idea that 2 years later you see it somewhere, you're like, I had,
Yeah.
I thought of that.
Yep.
If the billionaire Ross Perot said all it takes is one good idea to live like a king the rest of your life,
That's right.
right? So I taught on inspired ideas, but I said God will never ask you to do something that He hasn't already given you the ability to do, the talents to do, or He's not going to bring the connections. It doesn't take a lot of people liking you; it just takes the right people
That's right.
liking you, right? Just one connection from God, and so whatever you feel like God, the dream God's put in your heart, whatever you feel like God's saying to you, I'm telling you, God's already given you the ability. He's already given. He wouldn't have asked you to do it if He didn't already have everything you needed to make it happen.
Yes, I wanna underline what you're saying right here because I have a friend that God gave a dream to almost 10 years ago now, and there were 4 points in the dream, and he told the person to write a book. They never did it, and about a year ago, they were searching on Amazon, and guess what? The book was written, and it was not written by them. And
Wow.
so, even just knowing that, yes, we can miss our moment if we shrink back in fear or if we allow imposter syndrome to kinda come in and take over, we can miss our moment, and God will say, "Hey, I want this idea to come out. I want someone to birth this idea." And if you're not willing to do it, sometimes he'll give that idea to someone who will.
Yeah. I remember Reinhard Bonnke, the great missionary evangelist who's passed out, but he said one time he had this missions thing to put a book in every home and this good news book. And he said, God, why would you ask me? Why would you pick me? And God said, well, you were actually my third choice. He said, I've already asked two other people and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
It's the same with ideas. Well, God gave it to you, but you didn't do anything with it. And maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you failed at something and you let that fear of failure or fear of rejection keep you from trying again.
Mhm.
And so if that's you, I wrote a book called Another Shot, How to Get Back Up, Take Another Shot. Sometimes we miss it. I love this. I got the title of this book, Sitting with Kobe Bryant, the
Wow.
great basketball coach. Or basketball player. We were sitting in the lobby of the Island Hotel in Newport, California. He had he had just set the record for the most missed shot in the history of the NBA. 7 days after he set the record for the most missed shots, he passed up Michael Jordan for the most points scored.
Wow.
I said, "How'd you do that?" He said, "I just took another shot."
Wow.
A lot of times it's just getting up, taking another shot, and so that's a book that really helps with that. I took thousands of hours, studied great achievers, and, what was it that's common in their life, whether it was great in the baseball field, the battlefield, the business field, whether it was a Warren Buffett or a Mary Kay. Had the opportunity to speak with for Mary Kay Cosmetics and learn, man, she was amazing, but I found the things in their life that made them great, and I wrote a book called 12 Traits of the Greats, 12 common traits among uncommon achievers. And I love what John Maxwell said. If you can only read one book this year, you have it in your hand. Not bad from John.
Yeah.
John, the other day told me he has sold 36 million books.
Oh my goodness. I'm not
Well,
surprised.
that's why I love partnering with John because together, John and I have sold over 36 million books. That's what, but this is a book I was talking about, Favor. This is this was the very first book I ever wrote,
Wow.
and to this day, it's still the number one my number one selling book. Every 3 months when the royalty checks come, this still outsells everything else.
Wow.
And if you've never read this book on favor, just all it takes is one moment of God's favor to
Mhm.
change everything.
Yeah.
So those are some of them. Habits, we talked about this last
Yeah.
time. If they listen to the last podcast, make that, break that. So yeah, those are a few of them. There's one on miracles. They just keep coming.
Love it.
But I encourage you that. I don't write them. I'm not in it for the income. I'm in it for the outcome.
Yeah.
And people take time to write books because there's a persuasion and understanding, something that they feel can help others. And so that's why we put these together to help you, those that are listening, get an understanding of better to make life better than it is right now. And then we've been talking today about mindset. And that's my newest one. Mindset matters. Change your mind, you can change your world. So we can get people to change their self reflection, change their self perception, changes their thinking, their mindset. It's amazing what they'll be able to do and what they can accomplish.
So powerful. Well, Dr. Dave, where can people find and follow you?
On all social media, it's just Dr. Dave Martin, Dr. Dave Martin. And then, of course, davemartin.org is our website, davemartin.org. All the books are there. A lot of our coaching programs, all these have, if you like to do, like me, I just reading the book's one thing, but if I can dig into it and get a workbook and some videos, and we've got that pretty much for any book we've got, we've developed a whole, program to go with it to help you dig a little deeper into it. So,
That's awesome. Well, you have been incredible. It's always a joy to have you on this podcast, and thank you for investing in us and mentoring us from where you are. We appreciate it.
well, it's always an honor. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you for all you're doing. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Well, to our listeners, hey, what are you waiting for? It's time to get into community. We want you to head over to thrivetoday.com to learn more. You can check out Dr. Dave Martin's article over there, and you can also join with like minded women who lead and believe. We'll see you next time.